but you mentioned something in there that I want to talk about as well. And, that's the play of Julius Randle. And to me, one of my biggest concerns for the overall team is the defensive performance because again, this is why they were so good last year is because they were a lockdown defensive unit. That's why they were able to hang in there with the Bucks, with the Nets, because they played with tenacity. They played like it was the playoffs in the regular season, which a lot of teams don't. This year, I'm not seeing that same kind of effort, and I think Julius Randle kind of represents that lack of effort, if you will. I don't know if you saw on Twitter, there was a video that someone took. Well, not someone took, but it was like zoomed into the MSG broadcast. Julius, and this was a few games ago, he was asleep out there. Wasn't trying to play defense. He was kind of lollygagging around the court, not really standing near his man, kind of being like, oh, where am I? It's just, I don't know if it's the fact that he got this contract extension and now he just doesn't, we've seen this in all sports. The classic that I always go to is Mo Wilkerson. The guy got the bag for the Jets, defensive lineman, and then he totally disappeared. I'm not saying Julius has completely disappeared, but he's just not the same guy. I don't know if it's the fact that he feels he's got paid so he doesn't have to do as much. I don't know if it's the fact that there are fans in the stands because the thing was, as soon as those arenas started getting packed last year is when he started to dip off from that most improved player. I don't know if that's it, but the bottom line is his three-point shooting is down. The effort doesn't seem to be there, and the thing that drives me insane is he relies way too much on ISO ball. I mean, literally, the guy acts like, I'm sorry, you're not LeBron James. He has some of the. Look, I'm not saying Julius is a bad player. He's still a good player. He's not a star. He's a good player, but to watch him dribble the basketball, I don't know if you feel this way, but every time I watch him ISO up or try to drive to the hole, I always feel like he's gonna lose the ball. He has some of the ugliest handles I've ever seen. He's just he needs to be a guy that picks his spots, maybe makes one move or two, but he is trying to break ankles, and he's just not that guy. It's absurd to watch.
Yeah, and I think first and foremost, and I've had this debate with Knicks fans because I'm not too attached to the NBA. I'm cheer for the Bulls, but if I catch them, I catch them. If I don't, I don't. But you got to understand if you're a Knicks fan that Julius Randle is not a superstar. He's not a perennial all-star. He's a good second option on a team that doesn't have.
I would say at this point, maybe even a third option. I don't even know. And we can get into this in a second. I didn't mean to cut you off. I want to hear your point, obviously, but I'm starting to wonder whether or not this is really a guy you want to have here long term.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a question that needs to be answered in this upcoming season, just because of how prolific Julius was last year for the Knicks. Obviously getting an All-Star game appearance, which bodes well for his confidence. He gets the extension. And I don't want to say he's playing with arrogance, but Michael, I think, your point on his ISO, offense emphasizes the fact that he clearly thinks that, I don't want to say his skills are better than they are, but that he can run the offense for himself. And as you said, he's not a LeBron James, which is not a knock on Julius Randle because obviously LeBron, top three, slot him wherever you want. There's an argument in any spot. But his ball handling has never been that good. And he does his best is when he receives the ball in mid-post and goes to work there. But because when he tries to run clear out ISO, you know what's coming almost every time. It's either going to be a hard drive to the basket or a settle for a mid-range. And there's hardly ever any separation on those ISO moves. So now if you're the Knicks and you're seeing these struggles with Randle on the offense, you kind of think, do you need to get a trade in there? You definitely need something so that he's not the primary option. Because I think the thought when you brought it Kemba was that RJ is going to progress. Fournier is going to be a good for 7 or 8 a night, shooting for 3, can get a big bucket when he needs to, and if he's open, he'll hit. And Julius will just, absorb his role as, I'm not dictating the offense, I'm not the one handling the rock every possession, but I know that if I get the ball, I can go score. But because Kemba's on the bench, and because you don't have, good guard play as of right now, so much is required of Julius Randle, and that's perhaps the best reason to explain his drive to try and dominate every possession by himself, is that he might feel a pressure without a number 2 guard, because with Kemba coming in, he felt like he'd get some slack, and now that he doesn't have that slack, maybe he's just trying to overcompensate too much. But right now for the Knicks, you had an all-star in Julius Randle. I don't think you're getting an all-star this year, and he needs to, find something in his game to propel this offense forward.
Yeah, a lot to digest there, Keenan. I think you made some good points. I mean, with Julius, what I want to get to right now is just this idea, and you kind of mentioned it, and so did I. What is his future role with this team? I mean, the one thing we mentioned is ISO ball and the fact that he thinks he can control the offense, whatever. I'll tell you right now, it's a big play down the stretch. I mean, we saw that Nets game a few weeks ago, where the Knicks and Nets kind of went down to the wire, and you saw the polar opposite in that the Nets have a guy in KD, he's your closer, he takes over in the fourth quarter, and the Knicks, Julius, I think, wants to be that guy. Knicks fans want him to be that guy. He's just not, and I just don't trust him. 30 seconds left in the game, come on for the game-winning shot or for the tie, send us to OT. I don't trust Julius to make that shot. He most improved player. He's an all-star. I get it. I think he, again, could be a good piece on a good team, but he's not a star. He's not your alpha, and I think Knicks fans need to realize that. And I personally, and I don't know, I honestly don't know who on the Knicks I do trust right now, and we can get to some positives in a second, the few that there are, but the game on the line, and Julius has the ball. I don't necessarily trust him to get it done, and that's not what you want to hear from a guy who's supposed to be. I'm not even saying, like I said, he's not the alpha, but a guy who's supposed to be one of your better players.
Right, and I think we can make that assumption that Julius Randle after last season was looked to be as the guy for whatever the Knicks are in the next 4 to 5 years. But, you wonder what Julius Randle is going to be for the Knicks over the time. I think the better question is, what are the Knicks going to be over that time?
Yeah.
Because after last season, and obviously this season's still young in the sense that they can turn it around if need be, and they're going to have to if they want to see playoff basketball. But I think this Knicks team is still kind of directionless, and I think maybe we can get to this later. I think you're going to have to reevaluate your head coach at some point.
I don't know about that.
I don't know if that's what you want to hear if you're the Knicks, just because Tibbs plays such hard basketball, New York grit, whatever. But I think if you don't start seeing changes, and you don't, you're not getting the implementation that you want in terms of what guys are on the floor, and obviously if the wins aren't coming, I think it's going to have to be a question for the Knicks of where are we going to go, because the 4 seed last year was great, but if this season doesn't end in a playoff series win, I think there's a lot of questions for New York basketball solely because the Nets are as good as they are. But also, it just, for me, if you're looking at this Knicks team, what's the upside? What's the ceiling? Because I don't think this team is good enough to play 7 games with the Bulls, to play 7 games with the Nets, to play 7, I would even say, with the Miami Heat.
Well, the Heat are pretty bad this year, but that's because of injuries and COVID. I mean, if you want to say Bucks, Nets, even the Wizards are good this year. No, I get that, but I mean the thing, I would say, look, I think I'm very down on Julius, and it's not just because of this year. It's also because he performed really poorly in the playoffs. He seemed to kind of tail off at the end, and basically, my problem with Julius was last year was a year unlike any other for him. So there's not that consistent track record, and that's why I'm much more concerned because I'm like, is this guy just reverting back to who he really is? So that's why I'm starting to question his role in the team and his role going forward. Tibbs, on the other hand, I don't question because he has a proven track record. He was a great coach in Chicago.
Until he ran Derrick Rose into the floor.
Yeah, I know, but I'm sorry. I don't. That's a fair argument. A lot of people make that argument, but the simple fact of the matter is he had success there in Chicago, and you can't deny that. And the other fact of the matter is, he had success in Minnesota. I know there were some locker room issues there. I think that comes more down to personalities, not necessarily, Tibbs. And so when you look at the Knicks, the guy was coach of the year last year. And what my opinion, what Tibbs does so good is he thrives on having younger players. I think that's why sometimes with Julius, I question his future.